You wouldn't have noticed her at first. She stood quietly near the boarding gate, dressed with elegant simplicity, black slacks, a soft gray vest, and an expensive leather bag by her side. Calm, composed, eyes gently scanning her tablet. Just another traveler heading home after a long week. But for two patrolling police officers and one sharp-tongued woman in pearls, her presence was more than just noticeable. It was intolerable. A successful black woman standing in the business class line? That was enough to stir something dark. No alarms, no threats, no broken rules. Just prejudice, cloaked in suspicion. The kind that doesn't whisper, it acts. Within minutes, she was cornered, questioned, then arrested. Right there in front of a crowd too stunned to speak. But the two officers, puffed up with authority, had made a terrible mistake. Because the woman they just handcuffed, she wasn't just anyone. She was the law itself. It began with a sigh, sharp and deliberate, from a woman draped in designer labels and wrapped in entitlement. Abigail Prescott, a white woman in her 60s, stood a few feet away, arms crossed and eyes narrowed like daggers. She tapped her heeled shoe impatiently, casting glances that weren't just judgmental, they were hostile. Her gaze kept landing on the black woman in business class. To Abigail, something didn't sit right. The idea that someone like her, someone with skin darker than hers, could afford to fly in the same cabin, felt like a personal affront. She leaned toward the gate agent, her voice syrupy but poisonous. "Excuse me," she said with faux concern. "I don't feel safe. That woman over there has been watching my bag. She doesn't look like someone who should be flying business class, don't you think?" The agent, flustered, tried to explain that the woman had every right to be there. But Abigail wasn't interested in truth. She wanted trouble. Just then, two officers came into view. Officer Dave Riley, older, graying, tired-looking but stern, and Officer Sean Baxter, younger, sharp-jawed, and eager to flex authority. Abigail's demeanor shifted. Her voice turned whiny, full of fear she conjured on cue. "Officers, please," she said, pointing with theatrical flair. "That woman, something's not right. She's been watching me. I don't feel safe." Her act worked like a charm. Riley looked toward the accused, his mind already filling in the blanks with bias he didn't even realize he carried. Baxter, arms crossed, sneered. They didn't ask for context. They didn't ask for evidence. They simply walked toward her, slowly like predators in uniform. The crowd began to part, tension thickening the air. The woman, still unaware of what was coming, looked up, confused. "Ma'am," Riley said flatly, "step out of line. We need to talk." No explanation, no courtesy, just assumption and command. And behind them, Abigail Prescott watched with a crooked smile, satisfied. Her plan was working, and the gears of injustice had begun to turn. Audrey Hayes stepped out of the line calmly, her eyes scanning the officers with a firm, measured gaze. "What seems to be the issue?" she asked, her voice even. Officer Riley didn't answer right away. He was too busy sizing her up. Her expensive handbag, her polished shoes, the calm confidence in her voice. It didn't add up in his mind. People like her weren't supposed to look like this. Baxter, already agitated, barked, "You've been acting suspicious. Show us your ID and boarding pass." No mention of what behavior they were referring to. No explanation. Just a demand and a tone dripping with accusation. Hayes, ever composed, reached into her bag and handed over her documents. Riley glanced at them briefly, then muttered, "Business class, huh?" His lips curled into a sneer. "What do you do for a living?" The implication hung heavy in the air. He didn't believe she belonged. "That's none of your business," Hayes replied. "I've complied. Now either charge me or let me be." Her words were calm, but her heart was pounding. Baxter didn't like her tone. "You're asking too many questions. That's suspicious in itself." His voice rose. Riley stepped closer, now red in the face. "You think you can talk to us like that?" he snapped. "We're the law here." In a heartbeat, the line was crossed. With a flash of steel and a twist of the arm, Baxter slapped cold metal cuffs around her wrists. Gasps rose from the passengers nearby. Some pulled out phones, others turned away. Nobody stepped in. "You're under arrest," Riley declared, inventing charges as he spoke. "Disrupting public order, resisting an officer, threatening flight safety. It was absurd. Hayes didn't resist. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even step out of line until they told her to. But facts didn't matter. Not here, not to them. The walk through the terminal was a walk of shame. Hayes kept her back straight, but her wrists throbbed under the handcuffs. People stared, some with pity, others with suspicion. Abigail Prescott stood near the gate, arms folded, victorious. Hayes, humiliated but not broken, walked forward in silence. She was building something in her mind. Names, faces, every detail. Because justice, she knew, was coming. At the small airport police station, the air was thick with false confidence. Officers Riley and Baxter stood proudly, their chests puffed up, convinced they had dealt with a problem. They recounted the incident to the duty officer, painting the detained woman as difficult, suspicious, even dangerous. Meanwhile, Audrey Hayes sat quietly, calm and composed, wrists still stinging from the cold metal cuffs. The duty officer, a man used to the daily chaos of travelers and law enforcement alike, took her identification and began typing. Names, dates, details. Routine, until the screen blinked and froze on a name that didn't match their expectations. The officer's eyes widened. He glanced up from the computer to the woman before him. Chief Justice Audrey Hayes, he muttered, almost disbelieving. The room seemed to hold its breath. The silence was thick enough to cut through. This wasn't just any passenger. This was the highest judicial authority, a federal appellate judge, the kind of person who held the law itself in their hands. Riley and Baxter's faces drained of color. Their arrogant smirks vanished, replaced by shock and growing dread. The very woman they had insulted, handcuffed, and arrested was someone who could destroy their careers with a single ruling. Fear wrapped its icy fingers around them, constricting their throats. For a moment they stood frozen, the weight of their mistake crashing down like a tidal wave. Riley tried to speak, but his voice faltered. Baxter's confident posture crumbled. Their world had shattered, and there was no way to put it back together. The room, once filled with bluster, was now heavy with the sobering reality of who sat before them. And for Audrey Hayes, the truth was a weapon, one she wielded with quiet, unyielding strength. This moment would change everything. The two officers, once full of swagger, now looked like broken men. Riley's face was pale, sweat glistening on his brow as his voice shook with desperation. Chief Justice Hayes, he stammered, eyes pleading. We didn't know. This was all a terrible mistake. Please forgive us. His words spilled out in a rush, a fragile attempt to undo what had been done. Baxter, the younger of the two, fell to his knees beside his partner, tears streaming down his face. Please, Your Honor, he begged, voice choked with regret. We have families. We acted out of fear and anger, but we meant no harm. Mercy, please. The sight was pitiful. Two men reduced to supplicants, their pride shattered. But Audrey Hayes remained unmoved. Her eyes, steady and unyielding, met theirs with the calm authority of a judge who had seen injustice far too many times. She stood tall, dignified in the face of their humiliation. There was no room for pity here. Their cowardice, their bigotry, had consequences. This moment is not about mercy, she said quietly, voice clear and resolute. It is about accountability. Your actions have harmed not only me, but the very trust this country places in its law enforcement. Begging for forgiveness now does not erase the damage. The officer's pleas echoed in the small room, but for Hayes it was already too late. Within minutes, the atmosphere in the small airport police station shifted from tension to urgent action. The news of the Chief Justice's unlawful arrest spread like wildfire. Senior airport police officials arrived, faces pale and voices tight with anxiety. They knew this was no ordinary complaint. This was a crisis that threatened the very reputation of their force. Almost immediately, federal agents from the U.S. Marshal Service and representatives from the Court of Appeals appeared. The arrival of these powerful figures turned the station into the epicenter of a high-stakes investigation. No one questioned the seriousness of the situation anymore. It was clear justice had to be swift and absolute. Officers Riley and Baxter were promptly stripped of their badges, weapons, and authority. Their arrogance was replaced with silence as they were escorted away, Now the accused rather than the accusers. The airport police chief promised a thorough investigation, cooperating fully with the FBI's Civil Rights Division to ensure no detail was overlooked. Meanwhile, Abigail Prescott, the woman who had incited the racist accusation, was identified and summoned for questioning. Her false claims and reckless slander would not go unpunished. The authorities made it clear, lying to law enforcement, especially to provoke racial discrimination, carried heavy consequences. This was a turning point. The combined forces of law enforcement and justice worked hand in hand to restore dignity and accountability. The message was unmistakable. Abuse of power and racial bias, no matter where it hides, would be exposed and dealt with to the fullest extent of the law. The federal trial was swift and unyielding. Evidence poured in, body cam footage, witness testimony, and the unwavering account of Chief Justice Hayes herself. The courtroom was silent, heavy with the gravity of the moment. Riley and Baxter sat in stunned disbelief as the jury found them guilty of violating civil rights and unlawful detention. The judge's sentencing was firm, underscoring the grave breach of public trust. 4 years in federal prison for each man, a clear message that racism and abuse of power come at a steep price. Outside the courtroom, Abigail Prescott faced her own reckoning. She pleaded guilty to making false statements and was ordered to pay a hefty fine, a painful reminder that hatred and deceit have consequences. Justice, though delayed, was served. And while wounds from the incident lingered, the verdict restored faith for many who believed no one should be above the law nor below its protection. Judge Audrey Hayes returned to her work with renewed strength, her spirit unbroken by the ordeal. Her experience became a beacon, a reminder that courage and dignity can confront even the darkest injustice. This story isn't just about one woman's fight. It's a call to all of us to recognize the power of respect and accountability. Racism, prejudice, and abuse of power thrive in silence, but truth and justice break through. Remember, the fight for equality is long and hard, but it is a fight worth having. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay aware and stand strong.